of x. We now get x equals 3. But remember, we're only 50% done with this equation. My next step is to now take the value 3, which represents x, and go all the way back up to where I started and place it in for the variable inside my circle. I now get 2 times 3. Always replace with parentheses, which now means my y value, which is 2 times 3, is 6. To write my final answer, I always represent it as an ordered pair, in this case 3, 6. That is our warm-up. Now let's take a look at your worksheet for today. We're going to start with a word problem, and then we're going to move into some more practice. In this word problem, there are a couple key things we have to remember. A rectangle has a perimeter of 16 inches. The word perimeter is extremely important in the problem because the word perimeter tells us our very first equation. When we talk about a rectangle, let's draw a picture. A rectangle would be represented like this. In a rectangle, we have 2 lengths and 2 widths. For today, we're going to let x represent our width, and we're going to let y represent our length. So when I talk about perimeter, remember perimeter is the adding up of all my sides, which therefore means my perimeter is equal to 2y, or 2x plus 2y. And because it has a perimeter of 16 inches, that's my total to give me my very first equation from the first statement. Again, we are letting y to represent the length and x to represent the width. Our first equation, 2x plus 2y equals 16. Now, remember, a system needs at least 2 equations, so our second sentence will tell us the second equation. The length, that's L, is, very powerful word, means equals 3 times the width. Well, that would be 3w. But for our purposes today, remember length is y, so y equals width is x, so 3x. We now have our system. We are not going to be doing algebra tiles, so you can cross out that section. But we will solve this algebraically just like we did on Friday. Let's begin. We start with the equation that is already defined, where we have a single variable all by itself. Given that information, we will, again, circle the other side, the expression, and replace it for the letter that's not in the circle. That letter would be y. I will rewrite the equation 2x plus 2, but now when I get to y, I'm going to replace it with what is in the circle, all in parentheses, 3x. I now solve for the one letter that is left. So in this case, I'm solving for x. It's the only letter in my equation. 2x plus times 6x equals 16. Combine my like terms. 8x equals 16. We know what to do next. Our next step is to divide. Divide both sides by 8. X equals 2. But remember, we're only 50% done. Our next step is to take the value for x, the 2, and go all the way back up to the top to go inside that circle where we started. We replace the x with the value 2. We now get 3 in parentheses, 2, and now we can solve this equation. 3 times 2 is 6, so y equals 6. To write our final answer, we always represent it as an ordered pair, 2, 6. The last thing we want to do is to check our work. To check our work, we go back to our original problem and replace our x and y. So it says, is the perimeter 16 inches? Well, our perimeter equation was 2x plus 2y equals 16. If I go back and replace my two values for x and y, that becomes 2 times 2, which is 4, plus 2 times 6, which is 12. 4 plus 12 is 16. It checks. But it's not enough to work for one equation. It has to work for both. So let's go back to our second equation. The length is 3 times the width. Y equals 3x. Again, I will replace my x and my y values. Y is 6 equals 3 times 2. Well, 3 times 2 is indeed 6. Because it works in both equations, this is the solution to the system. Let's now have you try number 7. Please pause the video now. So now let's see how you did. Here is the work so that you can check it. The solution I got was 3, 6, and to make sure that it actually is the solution, I replaced it back into the original equations to check my math. 7 times 3 is 21. Minus 6 is indeed 15. Because it works, it is a possible solution, but it must work in both equations. When I replace y for 6 and x for 3, 2 times 3 does indeed equal 6. Therefore, it is a solution to the system. Now let's take a look at the next problem. We're going to work it just like we did before. This time, please follow along as I work. Circle. Choose the letter that is not in the circle, which is y. I rewrite the problem, replacing the value inside the circle for y. I now solve for the letter that is left. So in this case, I'm solving for x. For x minus distribute for x equals 16. Something's different this time. 4x minus 4x becomes 0. 0 does not equal 16. Because these two numbers are not the same, this must be one of our special cases. And since the two numbers are not the same, this means there is no solution. So these two lines must be parallel. That's the only way to get no solution. To check this, you could solve the second equation for y, and you will indeed see that the slopes are the same. So let's just do that really quickly. 4x minus 2y equals 16. Remember, isolate, move that x to the other side, place it side by side. Last step, divide everything by -2. When we do that, we get y equals -8. Negative divided by negative is a positive 2x. Because my slopes are the same, that is why they are parallel. Now, please pause the video and try the next problem. Notice here which variable you have it solved for. Okay, so let's see how you did. Please check your work. Please notice this time we replaced x, not y. So when I solved my equation, I was solving for y. I can use a distributive property, combine my like terms, solved for y, which means isolate, move the constant to the other side this time. Divided both sides by -1 to get my y value. Remember, we're only 50% done. We have to go all the way back up to where we started, to that circle, and replace the y this time. When I replace, I get 2 minus a -30, double negative, that means we add 2 plus 30 to get 32. Now watch how you write your final answer. The 32 is your x value and the -30 is your y value. Please pause the video and try the next problem. All right, let's see how you did. Here's my work. Please check it. You'll see the solution is here. I did solve for x again because that was the variable that was found inside the parenthesis, the circle. So I was able to check my work. Now, you're going to try the next problems on the next page on your own. And you will leave it with the sub so I can check to see how did you do. These are the problems you're going to try. I know they might seem a little intimidating, but I think you can do it. On this one, you're going to choose a letter to solve for. It can be X or Y, your choice. The next problem will be a word problem. Please define your variables. Always make X be your first piece of information and Y your second piece. And set up the system and solve it just like we've been doing. The next problem is just like how we started class. I think you can do it. Use your notes. But always remember, when we are solving systems, there's different ways you can do it. One way is that whenever you see y equals and y equals, best method, use your calculator. Look at the table and look for where y1 and y2 are the same. But when one equation is set equal to y equals or x equals, and the second one's in standard form, substitution is your best option. To wrap it up, when you see y is isolated in both equations, use your calculator. But when one equation has a variable isolated or a coefficient of 1, like what you see here, now is when you want to use substitution. So, after today, we've learned how to solve by graphing, looking for where the two lines intersect, to use our table, which is simply using our calculator, and substitution. Please come back and check this out as often as you need. Thank you.